So I guess let's just get right into it. I mean, I already spoke with most of you, so we don't need to get into like introductions of like, hi, I'm from this place. But if you do, if you are like talking, just identify yourself. Like I said, just that way we can keep it flowing. So I don't know if you saw a recent number that came out on CNBC was that 40% of people in Pennsylvania are at risk of eviction right now. 40% of renters and that wasn't broken up by apartment or house or anything like that. But again, that's like a very scary number. And one of the purposes of this call is to kind of come up with a plan to do that. So I built a website. I sent it to some of you guys that has some resources on it. And I was wondering if you had any feedback from that, or if there were any new resources that you had found that you hadn't had time to send to me yet. Okay. So I guess then what I really would like to ask is, so one of the things that we brought up last week, which I think is important, and now we have Josh Maxwell on the phone. So maybe this is something you might be able to answer.
I'm on a computer.
Or on a computer, look at you. Oh, I love the book in the background. So one of the things we talked about last week was that intake was only from, I believe, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And what would we need to kind of ramp that up to something that's 24-hour kind of response? I mean, what kind of resources would we need to marshal to do something like that? Or what kind of stopgap measures could we put for people on the weekends that may be finding themselves in a housing crisis and have nowhere to go?
You mean the intake for 211?
Yeah, sorry, excuse me.
No, you're fine.
Sorry, so Kyle, was that question for me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really for anybody, but you're the highest ranking person here, so I figured I'd throw it your way.
You're not in Westchester. That's Diane Herring.
True. But we're on the internet though, so like we're talking. We're trying to think a little bit more globally here.
No. All right. So I'm still getting up to speed with the 211 system. Although I did believe it was a 7-day-a-week program. If someone was different, please let me know. But we frequently will place people in housing same day. That's kind of what the program's designed to do. People go into the 211 system, and then they'll be assigned a case manager, and that person will get them to housing. Oftentimes it could be a hotel for a night or 2 nights. Sometimes it's assistance to get a voucher and then find them an apartment. But I would say at least my office specifically, one of 3 county commissioners, we deal with 2 or 3 of these cases a week. First get on the 211 system and then find them the support they need to get into housing that night. And I think in every instance where it's come up where I've specifically known the case, we got them to housing by that evening. And that includes weekends. So if someone called me on Saturday morning and said, or typically I'm calling you on behalf of my friend, she's in a situation with a child, got kicked, need housing tonight, we were able to connect with those folks, get in the 211 system and get them housing that night.
So what do you think? Because I mean, actually, I would like to thank you actually for your work a couple weekends ago. I know there was a young woman who posted on a Facebook post that she had her electricity turned off. And Jackie Alamine, the Coatesville Council president, I know reached out to you and you guys were able to get her arranged. But like, what's the gap then? Why isn't someone like her in her position? What do we need to do to get that information to her? Like how can I help? Because this is what I do for a living, right? So what's the channels that we're missing?
I think the government, the county government, all governments could do a better job making sure people understand their resources and make it easier for somebody to understand. I know when my mother was going through a situation like this when we were kids, there's a divorce, there's job trying to get more hours at a job, kids complaining, and it's tough to navigate these issues all at the same time, especially when you're dealing with an emotional or a traumatic situation. The trauma plays a role in your decision making and your ability to intake information and then make a good decision coming from that. So I think I think the county could do a better job while we have these resources and they're well-funded resources, making it easier for someone who's in a traumatic situation, who's already dealing with a lot of stress, to access those resources. from what I understand, and I'm a new employee, I'm one of the newest employees in Chester County, is that the 211 system is supposed to be a one-stop place to do all that. But folks, I don't think understand all the different things that that system includes. And also in commonwealths in our country, in Chester County, we tend to rely on nonprofits to a great extent to provide services to people on behalf of the government. And that means that if you're going to move to a subsidized housing situation, you might be navigating between different nonprofits that don't communicate with each other from silos. And that you might be a nonprofit run center in Westchester, or a domestic violence or a women's shelter in Coatesville, and vice versa. And these entities don't necessarily connect really well. And governments don't tend to be a really good connector. So having, I think, a better navigation tool on choosing between these different nonprofits and making sure that when someone's going through a situation like this, they know the one to go to and the one's most applicable to their situation.
So what you're saying, like, because one of the things I do want to work on as soon as possible is some sort of website to help navigate people to, you know, the resources, make it easier, because apparently, I don't know, it just, I've been on the 211 website. It is not the most user-friendly website. And I know it's servicing a huge area, but we need to, and my focus is pretty much just Chester County and helping our neighbors, right? I don't mean to be selfish, but we just need to be mindful with the resources that we have. But like, what would you say? So, and feel free, anyone, to chime in at this point, because like, I'm just trying to come up with ideas and solutions to what, if it's a website, right? And is the website just guiding you to 211? Like, because that already exists and that we already have, and it's apparently missing some people.
Well,
I think sorry, Renee, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to clarify in terms of 211 and its and people's availability to the 211 system. They are open for intakes, which gets them to street outreach, which is the second tier of the 211 program, from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Although 211 is 24/7, street outreach is not available after 5 o'clock on the holidays or on the weekend. So that's a huge gap, because if you called at 501, yes, 211 will call you. They try to, you know, connect you to some of the nonprofit resources that may help with shelter, but they can't really do it without being able to get into the system that puts people on a list, all right? So one problem is, or one issue in terms of people having access, if they don't have access to a county commissioner or someone who can call someone in the county to have their electricity turned on or whatever emergency it is, they're on that street that night, and there's no way around that. So that's one piece I just wanted to clear up. And so 211 is 24/7, but street outreach is not.
So would it be possible, and maybe this is a question for someone like the mayor, would it be possible to limit when eviction proceedings, like the actual eviction proceedings, take place, to not be outside of those time periods? Are they not? I honestly don't know. Because actually, no, the Westchester Police don't do that, right? That would be the sheriff, correct?
Right.
Yeah, that's not within the PD's jurisdiction. So I don't really know the answer to that. I'd imagine it's done through the court system, right? So the court system's only open certain hours as well, but I don't know. They must put some sort of a time frame on it once they make the judgment. I wouldn't think it would be immediate, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think of, you know, creative solutions to, if we can't increase manpower or something like that, right? Then maybe work the system so that at least the controlled ones that we can control. I mean, because of course people find themselves in situations like this sometimes just randomly, but there are ones that are on a schedule, right? And that schedule is dictated by the government. So maybe that's something Is that something that we could look into doing, or I don't even know how any of that would work?
Most of the people that we talk to on the street out or that call through to the street outreach system, most of them are not evictions. Most of them are people who are medically fragile, perhaps someone who was let out of the hospital onto homelessness. People get kicked out a lot at night, or after 5 o'clock. And those are the majority of people we talk to. And as I mentioned on the call before, just to be clear for everybody, in case someone doesn't know it, the 211 street outreach system complies with the HUD definition of homelessness, which does not include the majority of people who are not counted in the homeless numbers, which are people who are couch surfing or living with other people. A lot of times those are the people who get kicked out because there's just not enough room, not enough space, so there are a lot of numbers that are not counted in the numbers that are promoted, publicly, of people who are experiencing homelessness or eviction because their name isn't on the lease. So I just wanted to put that out there because it's, information I didn't know before I became involved with street outreach last November.
Renee, I've heard that there's people who maybe don't want to be counted as homeless, but certainly should be counted as homelessness. People who would consider themselves having a home, but might be couch surfing and don't have stable home, or living in like a garage or someplace without like access to water. Is that something that you see sometimes?
Absolutely. The majority of people that we talk to, that we have to say that we can't help you because you're not street homeless, that's the hardest conversation to have with somebody, to say you're not homeless enough, or you're not poor enough, or you're not in crisis enough. But that's important for us as a group to understand and to clarify with people when they're discussing the fact that they don't have someplace to stay. A lot of other calls we get are mothers with children who are sleeping in cars, or whole families who are sleeping in cars, and they work it out. They work out sleeping in cars and garages, but those are places for HUD category purposes are not uninhabitable for humans. There should not be homes, and they're not counted as homes. So we get calls from all around. And the ones, like you said, that we get between 8 and 5, we can call the caseworker or social worker at the hospital. We try to divert, we try to talk to the families and try to connect them, try to use some maybe diversionary funds. Perhaps, there's just not enough money for the electric bill that month, and that's why this person has to go. And, that's something that the county can do something about, and we work through it with them. We also, and just to be quick, we also work through all the providers, not only the ones on this call, but so many nonprofit providers who help with shelter, homelessness, homeless prevention, and also connecting people to resources. Let's say they have a voucher and they may need a landlord who accepts vouchers. So we work very closely in street outreach with all those partners, as well as the police. Although, Mayor, you did say, and it is true, it's not their job to police people who are homeless. Homelessness is not a crime. But we have been able to contact, a Sergeant Alice, or if he wasn't there, anyone at the police station, and in Westchester or wherever, and say there's a person on this corner or sleeping on the porch of a place they shouldn't be, and can we coordinate with you to try to get that person to a place that's safer? So there are so many situations.
Yeah, I know our officers consistently check in with the homeless population in town, make sure they're okay, try to get them to agree to accept services. So they're definitely involved in that on a routine basis, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about that, and one of the things, you're talking about, it happens at night, right? And we do have points of contact out in the community. One of possibly there's probably less points of contact now because of the pandemic. There's more places are closed, so you have less places to go. So that may actually make it easier for us to reach these folks now that we may have missed before, because they're going to be funneled into less places, right? There's less places you can go at 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night now. So maybe, because I know my specialty lies in digital marketing, but I know that we're going to need some real world kind of strategy in order to really make this work. And I'm thinking that we need to think, where do those people go at those points after 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, midnight? Where does someone go? And then how can we have information there that can then plug them into what they need?
I think it depends on where they are. And just because I'm in the thick of this, I may talk a lot, but anybody please shut me down at any time. But there's no particular place to go, but for example, people will go to bus stations. They'll go to 69th Street Station because they can get there from a bus in Westchester. In the wintertime, that's popular because they, as I'm told, blow good heat. And I know the 69th Street Station, and they're allowed to stay there. They're not harassed by the police in the wintertime, at least, and they go there. There are some agencies that have volunteers who go around, some nonprofit agencies like, Friends Association. They have partners who drop things off at their organization after hours. They may see someone in need of help, and then they'll call the staff there, and the staff there have, my phone number. They'll call me, and we'll try to figure out what can we do, knowing this person. So,
but let's imagine they don't know any of these resources exist, right? Like where, and you are thrown out of your house. It's 8 o'clock at night. I mean, I'm thinking like there's at this point, like the diners are closed. A lot of the places that normally would be open are closed. One of the very few places that are open are like a Wawa, like a 7-Eleven. And I mean, I think that would probably take more government people asking and sending something on an official letter. But if we could post, like if we could post something about 211 in the 7-Eleven and the Wawas in Westchester, I mean, again, it's a corporation, we would have to ask, but I mean, is that something that you guys think would A, be possible, or B, be willing to do?
I think a huge part of what you just said is promoting 211 again and again and again, and putting it on that website. Perhaps there are still too many people, even providers, that I'm blown away, don't know 211 at least. So yeah, and other organizations that are open and willing to help with that community, they've been very open to helping and giving us information and helping us, get people food and things. So I think that's a great idea if it can be done.
So Kyle, this is Matri. Wawa, most of the Wawas still have bulletin community boards. You just need to talk to the actual store manager. And for something like this, I doubt if you would get any pushback just to post the flyer. The second thing is, I think a large percentage of people, especially nowadays, everything is word of mouth. So it's word of mouth. You'd be surprised the amount of people that are also on Facebook and still utilizing that, and all the neighborhood groups and community groups. I think that's how Jackie found out about the woman you were talking about. She was on a group and somebody said, oh, you don't know Jackie, and et cetera. Well, that exists pretty much all throughout the county. You have all these neighborhood groups, people talk, one person goes to another. So I think there are a couple of resources, but definitely, and since you're a digital person, I think really don't underestimate social media and how to effectively use that. And all of the different community people such as the Jackies, and you know, in Westchester you have Cindy Outlaw and Val Jean, and you know, in Kennett Square you have Latoya and Ethan. So every place has their people that people know how to get in touch with. Don't underestimate them, but social media and definitely the Wawa community boards.
So, I mean, is there, I mean, and again, you may not know the answer because I know you're new, but Josh, is there any sort of social media advertising for 211? Because I do know I've done a bunch of Facebook advertising, but I've only recently started doing stuff with a realtor, that there's limitations on what you can do with things when it's regard to housing. There's like limitations on like what you can talk about. So I don't know if you've run into that roadblock, because I personally haven't run any ads like that, or if you guys know of any initiatives like that.
Yeah, I don't. So yeah, this information gets shared on government social media pages, but who follows the Chester County Community and Economic Development Facebook page, right? Unless they need to, they're probably not doing it. And so, so a lot of, you know, people like Khadijah will call or things like that. I know James Logan does a good job in Coatesville of getting information out to his listserv on different services that are changing through the county. And unfortunately, we rely on those types of things because I don't think government is really good at. People don't go on Facebook to follow a government, you know, program necessarily, and we share this stuff on emails, but it's not necessarily getting to the people that need it. And organizations like Home of the Sparrow, for example, are really in touch with their community, or LCH really in touch with their community. And they're the people that are on the ground, that people pick up the phone or knock on the door and say, where do I go for help? And those people end up being like the point of service folks for county services. And, you know, that's disappointing to a large degree, but we rely on our nonprofit network to do a lot of the heavy lifting for government services. And, you know, I think one of the things we want to do with the county, being new, and myself being the youngest person in county government elected, is to find new ways that we can get our services to people who need it. From what I've learned so far, it's not that funding is the biggest issue here in Chester County compared to some other municipalities with a lot of need, whether that be major cities with high degrees of homelessness. A lot of the issues we have in Chester County, it's not financial barriers that are getting in the way of solving these issues, whether it's homelessness or other social issues. It's getting those folks the help that they need, and making them feel comfortable asking for that help. So I think that we'll start in a hopefully in a moving out of COVID world, we'll give some serious thought of pulling together some really intelligent people, and finding better ways to get those services into the hands of people that need it.
Well, I mean, one of the purposes of me bringing all these folks together is to kind of create some sort of marketing campaign. Because my concern is that we're going to be seeing, like I said, massive amounts of possible evictions on the horizon, and like we need to be proactive about this, I think. So, I mean, so I agree with you completely that like no one's following a government program, right? Like, so we need to create some sort of, I did look up, 211 doesn't have a Facebook page, right? If they had some sort of, like, if we made some videos that educated people about stuff, and like this is stuff I'm willing to do pro bono. I have the resources, and I mean, I got the time. So like what I really need is, I can do all this stuff. I just need direction. I need to be told what to say.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
If you're looking specifically to deal with evictions, you may want to target instead where evictions are filed and who does the evicting. So that is to say, magisterial district courts and constables. Have the constables, when they're evicting someone, hand them the information for 211.
That's smart.
And when the MDJs are processing evictions, I mean, that's a person who is then at risk of homelessness. You know, if we're talking about things that are straightforward evictions, not the things that Renee was talking about, where there are other barriers, the person's couch surfing and they just get kicked off the couch. I think that when we're talking about simple, legal, lawful evictions, they're traumatizing, yes, but the resources that can be provided are straightforward. MDJs can be educated. You can have a meeting and call all the MDJs of Chester County together. They have meetings regularly. And they would be happy to have information they can offer to people who show up in their court and are facing eviction. And then the constables in Chester County who actually do the evicting, they don't like doing it. You know, none of them are there taking pleasure in that, but you know, so it would probably be nice for them to be able to say, I have a resource for you. Here, try calling this number.
Maybe even, Shannon, you probably know more about this than I do, but maybe even with the eviction notice, having information that comes with that notice that says, here's the 211 system. Last thing you need is somebody getting evicted with a baby in one hand, you know, trying to find a phone.
Yeah. And that's something that, you know, as when the MDJ processes that thing and the constable serves it onto their door, you can have a flyer that has to go out, that the MDJs say this has to go out with it. I mean, again, you know, if you're talking about those, I think those are easier to address, a lot easier to address than the ones that Renee was talking about, and maybe the ones that I think are a lot more difficult because they have so many other pieces going on, whether it's addictions or mental health or just, you know, a set of barriers. I would be interested to know whether there is, and this is diverting the conversation a little bit, but I'd be interested to know if there's any discussion on how it is 211 might be able to help on an inter-county basis. I have had a couple of my GAL folks, guardian ad litem folks, as well as some mental health folks who have sort of inter-county addresses, whether it's Lancaster and Chester or Montgomery, Delaware, Chester. And as soon as they get benefits in Montgomery County, well, you have to go through Montgomery County homelessness issues. You cannot use Chester County's resources then, even though they've been homeless in Chester County. So I would be curious to know sort of some of these tougher cases, what can be done to have the governments work a little bit better together. And that becomes very difficult, of course, because they're independent government systems. But I've seen too many referrals, and I'm sure Renee has seen some herself, where we have a person who, or even an entire family, where there's 3 different addresses.
Right.
So that was a lot of information. I'll be quiet now.
Well, that's important, what you said, Shannon.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is something that maybe Chester County could be proactive about that and reach out to the neighboring counties, you know, and just say, hey, because like, let's start those conversations now, right? If we can. And I don't know if anyone on this call has the power to do anything like that, but that would be, I think, I wrote that down in my notes. I think it's a really good, easy, low-hanging fruit.
It is. And for example, Chester County does have an out-of-county policy where if you are not a resident of this county, you have to, no matter where, you could be homeless in this county right now, but if you're in Lancaster County, we have to send you back to 211 in Lancaster County, which can be pretty traumatic and traumatizing for people in crisis. But Lancaster and Montgomery County, well, I know Montgomery County for sure. If your body is in Montgomery County and you're homeless in Montgomery County and Lancaster, I did talk to the leaders of the, you know, the street outreach divisions there, then they look for resources for you there and then work everything else out on the back end. But at least hopefully you'll have a place to stay for one night. There's even a county that we will take you and put you up. It's in, as a matter of fact, it's when I was doing some research, it was in New York. All right, so if you are homeless and we have done some verification of that, and for 7 days, we'll put you in a shelter, or we have limited shelters in Chester County, or a hotel. But during that 7 days, like you said, there's a social worker assigned, and we're doing some deeper digging to try to find out if there are diversionary resources or some other way we can help. And there's no promise that you'll, you know, stay in that shelter or that hotel for more than a week, but that's a time when we can at least get you out of crisis and begin to work with you to find out what other resources you need, or how to connect with the ones you already have that you may not have thought of in different ways.
Now, I mean, one of the things that really has me probably the most worried, and this is a question where, I mean, I think it's a little aimed towards Josh, but I think really everyone, I hope some people are at least thinking about this. Like at the beginning of the meeting, I talked about that 40% number in Pennsylvania. 40% of people are unable to pay eviction, unable to pay. So let's say that's a high estimate, and let's say it's half that, 20%. If 20% of the renters in Westchester or Downingtown get evicted, does the system have the capacity to handle that shock at once? And if not, what are we going to do to try, like, because we have about a month and a half, well, we have about a month now at this point before that might start to happen. All right, I think I was told it was a month and a half, and then it's another month and a half after the eviction notice. So we have to like mid-October, right? Because August, so September, and then so mid-October. We have until mid-October when this could all happen. And, you know, worst case scenario, 40%, but even half that, 20%. What kind of systems do we, I guess, have in place to help manage that? And what do we need to start investing into help now while we have time to prepare?
The shortest answer to that is, financially speaking, the county of Chester would be able to fund a situation like this. But keep in mind that a lot of the funding we're talking about is federal and state subsidized. So this is all subsidized by typically federal or state resources. If someone goes through the system, we end up getting federal or state reimbursed for a lot of these programs. So from a financial standpoint, which is what the point I can speak to, the county could functionally do that financially, as far as I know. And then there's all these things with COVID-related matters that has increased funding for municipalities over 500,000, which Chester County is one of, that provides more opportunities to help folks out. And so at least through the end of the year, we could handle it from a staffing standpoint, and from a bed standpoint. You know, with hotels being mostly empty, we utilize almost entirely hotels during the red and yellow phase of COVID-19. And we have a lot of empty hotel rooms in Chester County, so those could be utilized as well. From a staffing standpoint, I don't know. That's a situation where we rely so heavily on our nonprofit community to do the heavy lifting with this stuff. And the Domestic Violence Center is always overwhelmed with the amount of resources that they have and the amount of need that they need to support. And I think we could maybe as a community, including the government, build the capacity of some of our nonprofits to meet greater demand. But from a financial standpoint, we're lucky to live where we live.
That's more comforting to hear than the doom and gloom that I've been reading in the newspaper. So that's good to know. But it is, so I guess then we need to go back to, if that happens, how do we get in touch with people? And I guess in the last meeting, I talked about this like funnel that I created, because my mind, you know, I do business and stuff like that. And I looked at it kind of like a funnel. And, you know, right now we're in this like limbo phase where there's a lot of people right now who may be in a eviction limbo, owe money. Like, I think if we can start educating them, that could help stave off a lot of the initial shock, right? Like if we can start educating people, like, here's, like, just because you're not going to be evicted doesn't mean that you don't owe them money, right? Like, and start, because I think there are some people who think that it's free rent right now, right? And then there's going to be a huge bill when this comes reckoning. So I think that we need to start getting that kind of information out as soon as possible. And so if one of the folks from the nonprofit world could direct me, you don't have to do it right now, but could send me an email towards like some information that we can make into like a video. And, you know, I would absolutely invite any of the government people, if you would like to be part of this, I would absolutely welcome your help. But to educate folks to like, here's the situation. And then, I started working on a website. It's very basic. I just kind of a sub-site off of one of my sites right now, but we're going to create its own thing. And, just like you said, Josh, like, make it something that people, it's easier to digest. And the 2-on-1 actually shouldn't be that hard to market, right? But actually, Mauricia showed me that they do have a Facebook page, and I did pull it up. And I'm going to be reaching out to them. I mean, because they didn't do any videos or anything like that, and I would happily, plug into them and show them stuff, because I think that's exactly where we need to go. No need reinventing the wheel. You know what I mean? Like, invest in the things that we already have, put energy and resources behind the things that we already have. But it's run by the United Way.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
See, I was under the impression that it was run by the county. So the United Way runs the 2-on-1 system?
The 2-on-1 for Chester County. I don't know. I know that 2-on-1 works for other counties. I don't know if the United Way funds all of those initiatives, all of those municipalities.
Well, this Facebook page is it actually looks like it's the national one. So would there be value in creating a local Chester County one? I mean, again, I don't want to put resources into something that would be just repeating something, but if you think there's value, that's something I can do.
I believe there is. I'm sorry, go ahead, Josh.
Oh, I was just going to say that the United Way in Chester County, which is based in Exton, has a stabilization program and provides additional resources to people who are looking for like jobs and things like that. So it ends up being like a one-stop shop for those types of stuff. So we're blessed to have nonprofits that coordinate and handle that type of effort.
Yeah, I haven't interacted with United Way on this recently, but I did interact with them several years ago. I will reach out. Hold on, it said we had a message. Hold on. Wait. So Mauricia is awesome with the internet. And they do have a local one. Only has 722 followers though. So.
Are you bragging, Kyle?
No, I mean, I'm just saying that we need to get that up, right? We need to get that, like, I mean, there's definitely stuff that, and they do have videos. It looks like they have been doing a lot more productive stuff. Not recently, but they have been doing stuff. So this is great. So I will be adding them to the groups of people to reach out to this.
Matri said you can certainly text 2-on-1 here, and Matri also mentioned that you can, they have a zip code based SMS service, and that's how calls are routed, which may not always be best, but it's what's available.
Well, I mean, the main reason why I want to get in touch with them is my main thing, what I do for a living, is like literally Facebook ad targeting. That's my place of expertise. So if we need to get this stuff in front of people, and if you're saying that resources financially aren't that big of a problem, I mean, I'm again willing to volunteer my time to make this happen, but we need to, get in touch with this stuff and create the content that we need to identify. And I think, like we talked about at the last meeting, like the stages. It's like right now, I think we need to educate people, but we also need to start preparing those resources for when the evictions start coming, so that people can just look up and they're there. And it looks like a lot of this stuff is there, kind of spread out in different silos. So we want to just kind of put it all in one place, in something that's user-friendly and easy for people to understand. Josh, you had something that you want to?
Yeah, I just want to say, I don't want to say that money is not an issue. Running a government, you don't want to say that. It's more that it is not the biggest barrier to us solving homelessness in Chester County. I wouldn't say is financial assistance. It's building the capacity, better supporting our nonprofits, and the government plays a big role in that. And it's making sure that people have access to these services, regardless of whether they have a phone or know Khadija Alameen or me or whoever else. I will just mention, back when I was in grad school, I wrote a paper on homelessness, and there was a study out of Penn that did calculated it was in New York actually, and it calculated the cost of just giving somebody a house and health insurance for the year versus having them go through all these services, government sponsored, nonprofit sponsored, food shelters, these different programs, food assistance. And the cost to actually just was about 40,000, and this is 20 years ago, but that to give someone a house and insurance for the year was somewhere around $40,000. And what someone costs living on the street and then spending, going in and out of shelters was about $45,000 a year. So it actually just all this bureaucratic paperwork ended up costing the government and the nonprofit community a lot more than it would have otherwise, just giving this person a place to live. And I think it's important to continue to look at some of these things as we review services that have maybe been around for a long time and figure out what's a better long-term situation. And I keep going back to nonprofits. There are some nonprofits out there nationally that do a really good job taking someone from homelessness to a stable situation financially. A lot of faith-based communities focus on that and focus on the things that are ancillary to homelessness, whether it's drug addiction or getting out of a domestic violence situation and solving those problems. Because if you don't solve those problems, then that homelessness will continue.
I'm down, man. You want to buy houses? I'm down. But how do we got to convince to do that, man? I am so behind that.
I'm going to lose re-election before I get started. So I don't want to say we can do all this. But understanding the balance economically between these things, I think is an important thing for people like me to talk about. That all these different components, the United Way, all these things, all this stuff costs money to do. And it's expensive. And there's other things we should certainly look at.
Now, I definitely have one more question, but I do want to invite, I know Kaylin and Mauricia are on the line. Do either of you have a question for anyone here? Because I know you guys are two of the guests on the line.
I mean, I messaged you after our last meeting about a thought that I had about like making sure that people are seeing these things, because not everybody, I mean, a lot of people still do use Facebook and have phones, but for the people that aren't doing that, I brought up the idea to just you, Kyle, of, as somebody already said about like putting like flyers of information in Wawa, but also like talking to our local police about like areas that they do notice, or even nonprofit organizations about areas where homeless people tend to go, and like putting a bunch of those things there, because it's probably not just Wawa or stuff like that. And I was just wondering if that's like a stupid idea, or if like that's actually helpful. Like, I don't know if that would be
schools as well.
Huh?
Didn't you message me about schools as well?
I might have.
Giving it through the students?
Oh, no, somebody said that in the last meeting.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know how schools are going to go this year, because I think they're still deciding in some places, right, about what's going on. At least I talked to a guy who's on like the member of a school board, and they still don't know what they're going to do about that. But I don't know if that's in this area or not, but they still don't know if like getting flyers into kids' hands can even happen yet.
No, but with the resources, the services that they are still delivering, like Maitri mentioned, the free lunch programs, and they're all over so many neighborhoods. They may just drop them at somebody's house, and that person distributes them, so that information can go into the bag, be stapled onto it.
Mauricia actually put that in the comments, like right as you were saying that. Yeah. No, I love that idea. I think that's something. I mean, who do we need to reach out to make that happen? Like once we come up,
probably have to reach out to every school district.
Okay.
Because the districts are independent, and so they sort of build their own lunches and they distribute their own lunches. And each one has their own system for it. Some of them, it's just the school's open and you kind of come by out in the parking lot. Some of them, it's dropped off to somebody in the neighborhood, like Renee said. But it would, I mean, to cover Chester County, you'd have to reach out to every school district in Chester County, which isn't all that many.
Well, if it was easy, it would have been done already. So we just gotta do it. You know what I mean?
And the Chester County Food Bank, we can't forget about them. They're everywhere, and they're supplementing a lot of.
And the food bank is actually a great idea for putting flyers out, and they could put a flyer in every single box they send out, you know, because they're putting together boxes for folks now.
Right.
So it's even easier to make sure that it gets to some of those folks. I mean, to the point of whether you're having police officers bring the flyers to people who are sort of in gathering spots for some of the homeless population.
Oh, no, that's not what, I'm sorry,
Okay.
That's not what I was suggesting. I was suggesting like talking to people, and just like the police came to my mind, but also like those nonprofit organizations that work with homeless people, like even the Domestic Violence Center, where like people that are coming off the streets to those organizations like frequently come from, because I know like even like when I used to be an intern there, so sometimes we would have to exit somebody and they would have nowhere to go, so there would be just people on the street. So there's not necessarily like, some people don't think, oh, I'll go to Wawa, oh, I'll go here, but like some of them just like kind of like, you know, wander, for lack of a better term. So I was wondering like if we knew those spots where people are like kind of where it's a more popular spot for people to gather that really don't know what like, and have been exited out of their housing situation, and really don't know what they're going to do next. If there is a popular spot for people to go to where everybody knows that that's kind of where there's like a hot spot, if there was a way to get information put out there, like if we could talk to places that know where that would be and just like put a box of flyers or like something there. I don't know. That's why I said I don't really know what I'm doing.
Ellen, hotspot, too soon to use that word, hotspot. I'm joking. But I was thinking of, as you explained it more, I was thinking about like a Crossroads, you know, or the Salvation Army. I don't know if they're open in the day. I know that Crossroads has limited hours, but people can go there and get food and get lunch and wash their clothes. And
Mauricia, you mentioned fusion centers. Would you like to elaborate on that? Mauricia?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hi. So there are like law enforcement fusion centers out there that aggregate data between different police departments. So everybody has like a clear picture of what's going on. And I think we would probably benefit from trying to either set up or have an organization figure out how to set up one that does the same for these resources for evictions, and just people needing help in general with like food and shelter, right? Just like a central source that it doesn't matter where you're from, we can point you in the direction that you need to go to, and like also have like data about where people are coming from and how big the problem is, so that information can get shared with everyone. So that's generally what a fusion center is. It's all about information sharing.
Are you saying something like making, because that's sort of 211 sort of is a conglomerate of services, but you're saying have 211 also gather data from the people and then share it out affirmatively?
Not like transparently, but with organizations that are there to serve the people. Like okay, we need to put a food distribution place somewhere, or we need to find a home where people can go. Where are those people that need those services? Would kind of be the back and forth. Like we don't know who is going to need services and where they're going to be, and it might be more helpful to have that knowledge.
Do you also mean like a physical place?
It doesn't have to be. Like a fusion center doesn't have to be a physical place. It could just be a website or a Facebook group, or just a way to even a Slack channel. Like it just needs to be a place where people have a repository of information and a way to share it.
Well, I know that there are at least 2 big mines for information like this in Chester County, not counting the housing authority and whatever contacts they get from people, but which also, I mean, the housing authority evicts people too. So, sort of that's some of what we're talking about here. But then, we've got anyone who has CYF contact. CYF frequently deals with families that are dealing with homelessness and what that does to their kids and things like that. But CYF obviously doesn't talk to any other government entities. And the mental health department, mental health IDD, has a huge repository of information in it as to resources and housing situations and how to deal with some of these really big barriers that people have. But again, none of that information really, I don't even think, can be shared with regs as they stand. So, and a lot of that is federal barriers that we couldn't get around at all. And so having a fusion center that gathers data of any personalized type is going to be a huge problem, I think. And that's one of the biggest barriers. Maybe Renee can speak more to this, but it is a big barrier. The departments here within Chester County government do not speak well with each other because they can't most of the time. And then the nonprofits can speak well with each other. And that's why, as Josh was saying, the nonprofits do a ton of heavy lifting because they speak so well with each other. They can sort of intertwine and put a whole net in place before the governments can get enough releases signed to talk to anybody.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a problem. That bureaucracy kind of needs to go away for this situation, right? Like,
for a lot of situations, I think.
Oh, definitely. But like, just with this, I don't even know like all the different people that need to be able to talk to each other to make this more of a streamlined process. But that, I mean, it sounds like a bottleneck and a roadblock and needs to change.
One thing that I saw in neighboring county do was, at least I think they did, set up one-stop shops for any county services that you could possibly need. Where you could walk into a place in Westchester or Oxford or Spring City, and there'd be someone there, and you say, "Hey, I'm looking for housing or anything else." It could be CYF, MHIDD, anything. That person's supposed to get you connected to those services and get you signed up for whatever you need right there and there. Instead of going through, I can't tell how many times you get an email and you connect with this department and that department, then this nonprofit, then that nonprofit, and just having a one-stop location geographically spread out through the county where you can walk in and any county service, whether it's veterans, what have you, and that person can help you. That's what was on our to-do list pre-COVID to try and get set up. The county owns a lot of property in geographically spread out through the county. And I know that we're interested in discussing how we can set that up and having, like, instead of having one person does MHIDD, another person do CYF, another person in housing, we have one person that connect you to any of those services. And it certainly would have to loop in the nonprofit community as well.
I mean, that's amazing. And I also would like to point out that I know the borough of Westchester owns property. I'm sure other boroughs and municipalities own property as well. So I'm sure you could work with them, finding something. I mean, unfortunately, there looks like there's going to be, a lot of businesses going out of business, unfortunately. So it looks like we will have some storefronts that will probably be open, and it will, that could be a way to put some foot traffic back into a community. You know what I mean? Like, I think it could just draw people into somewhere where they're maybe someplace just left, filling that with some sort of government services office, would probably be a benefit to any downtown that had something like that, because it would just draw people in. I mean, I don't know, what would you need to do that? I mean, you said that you were starting the plans to do that pre-COVID. Like, I mean, that sounds like an amazing resource that could be really useful. I mean, especially, I know a lot of people are trying to reach out about one thing or another, and they phone lines are forever and you can't get, and I think people just want to talk to another human being. And I think that setting up some sort of center could be extremely useful to our community right now.
Yeah, you'd have like almost like a case manager who understands how all these things function together and will get you placed. You don't have to worry. A big barrier towards homelessness or government services is paperwork, and filling it out wrong. Your address changes 4 times. Maybe you're getting away from somebody who you have a PFA from, and you're bouncing around a little bit, and it's just bureaucratic. That's the barrier, right? And so if you have someone on the other side who takes care of that stuff for you, maybe you're a veteran experienced homelessness, you have post-traumatic stress syndrome. People have things going on often that puts them in these situations, drug and alcohol, and having just one person that can handle all that bureaucratic stuff for you, and just that one person you can rely on. So I can't stay on the Zoom much longer because we have
we're helping wrapping up.
Things I wrote down that I need to work on is get Shannon. I think Shannon mentioned evictions. Get information on 211 when served. Help people who are physically here but have addresses in places in Montgomery or Lancaster. Make sure they get into the Chester County 211 system. One-stop centers, and collecting the 211 data and making it open source to the public. That last one could just be like, hey, United Way, can you do that? Well, or it could be like maybe someone in the county community development stuff. So those are 4 things I jotted down that I can work on. I know this is being recorded. Kyle, I trust that you'll share it with me. And I can look to see what other great ideas might have. And certainly anyone reach out to me if I can't be helpful at all. And I apologize, I have to jump off.
Well, and also you have my contact information. If one of these organizations needs help getting their word out, I am offering my services, pro bono to, I'll happily show them, do Facebook advertising, how to best use their social media. Just put them in touch. I'd love to help out anyone that I can.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, and is there anyone else that has any other questions or anything? Like I only wanted to keep this to an hour, so I don't want to, but does anyone have anything else?
I just have 2 quick points. To me, the most salient, urgent thing that can be done is something Shannon mentioned, which is getting the 211 information in the hands of the constable and the magistrate judge so that you get right to the person who is experiencing the eviction and they have somewhere to turn. I think that's viable, doable, and could be really helpful in the short term. So I'd put that as a priority. Secondly, the thought that just keeps running through my mind based on my experience here in Westchester working with the homeless is I've seen the same people come back again and again to Safe Harbor. And it's because they cannot get to that next step of transitional housing. There is such a severe lack of truly affordable housing. And this is just a really deep systemic issue that we have to tackle. So there are many, many layers to this issue. I think it would benefit the group to view it kind of layer by layer. What are some of the immediate, actionable, doable things that the group can do right away, given that there are likely to be more evictions coming down the horizon. And that's why I thought the idea of getting the 211 right in their hands was just really great. From a larger perspective, that next step to transitional and more affordable housing, I mean, we have voucher money sitting and no one is taking advantage of it here in Westchester. Like there are big questions as to, what can we do as a community and a larger society to increase the affordable housing stock. So just wanted to share my thoughts.
Those are important things.
Yeah, I agree. The affordable housing is something that I know you care about and you've been doing work on, which I thank you for. But it is probably because I know there's a bunch of vouchers and nowhere to put people, like you said. So that, and I don't know, I do want to wrap this up, but maybe if anyone has, like, who do we talk to? Like, where do we start with that? Do we start with the developers as they're developing the properties? Do we start talking to existing landlords? Where do we start with that conversation?
Well, I've been evaluating that, and I've had some really interesting conversations with Church Housing Corporation. They've done the workforce housing development at the Melton Center and Phoenixville, and you know, it really depends on the community. In boroughs like Westchester, it's very difficult because there's a much greater demand than we have supply because of the student population. So we have to really try to look at things creatively, and one approach is to actually target housing units that can be turned into multi-units or are existing multi-units that have owners who are likely to be in the market soon, and go after them and target them and build relationships with them, so that when the time to sell the unit comes up, they are willing to engage in some creative partnership with organizations like Church Housing to turn them into partially subsidized and workforce housing units. So if you just sit and kind of wait for the market to play out, we're just going to continue to be gentrified, and our housing values are going to just keep going up and up. So we have to try to look at creative solutions like that, which take a lot of work. It's a heavy lift, and you need a lot of commitment within the community to do that.
And Mayor, just real fast, what you said, there were a couple of things that you said that resonate deeply with me, having worked with the homeless population here and in the largest homeless shelter in Philadelphia just a few years ago. You said transitional housing. You said engaging with people who are homeowners now, who may be in the market soon, may want to just get out,
right,
and know that there are other options. We have to be able to engage in conversations with those people. But something that I've noticed, and sometimes it gets lost in translation when we're talking about the solutions, not the people who are boots on the ground or who deeply understand it, like I think the people on this conversation, but being culturally community aware. Homelessness in Coatesville does not look like homelessness in Chester County. I believe someone told me there was an article printed recently that there were 3 homeless people in Chester. I'm paraphrasing it, I didn't read the article, but some low number of homeless people in maybe Coatesville or Chester County, whatever it was inaccurate. But people who are just gonna look at that newspaper won't know. They won't know that Coatesville is a place where you will not walk, you won't step over people on the street who are homeless, because there are so many huge families here that you might not get to stay at that house, but you might be able to sleep on the porch or in the garage, but you're still homeless. And the last thing I wanted to say in terms, I guess, of municipalities or governments, when we are talking, you know, Coatesville is rising and other areas around here are rising and there are opportunity zones. I think there needs to be more of a push or of a commitment to these incoming organizations to have more affordable housing out there.
I mean, I think one of the things I think I've spoke to Nick Allen, a councilman in Westchester, about this is like, we need some sort of, you know, if you're going to build new housing, X amount % needs to be affordable housing, you know, for all the new people coming in. I think that's something that is legal to do. You will definitely get pushback, I think. But I think that that's really the only way. Like the mayor said, you have to get creative and you need to start just forcing it to happen. Otherwise, the market will just keep on going. You know, the prices will keep on up, and will, like the mayor said, just keep on gentrifying out all the people that, you know, have lived here for sometimes generations. And that,
and we have to break these cycles. And like you said, in terms of transitional housing, the majority of people who have housing vouchers, mainstream long-term housing vouchers, are in Coatesville. Yep. If transitional housing were part of the solution, like the tight solution, then there are too many people that don't know that housing vouchers, if you are part of the housing authority's family, there's a program that vouchers can be turned into something you can use toward a mortgage. Then just like with the same people going through the shelters and we just see these cycles, we would not have the same people occupying rental units. They could turn those units into, they could turn those vouchers into something toward a mortgage. I mean, they're taught how. There's a year-long program to find out how to do that. But so many people don't know that information. So information is key, and I agree in our conversations that we just have to get it into the right hands and talk to people and kind of push back a little, because these cycles are hurting our community and our country.
Can you send me that information about the housing?
Sure.
About for the mortgage? I want anything. You sent me another flyer that I didn't have time to get all that stuff because it had some personal information on there. I didn't want to, like the other two I could just rip and put them on.
No.
The other one had some personal information, so I wanted to like synthesize it into something. And and I do want to also thank Kaylin ahead of time for volunteering to help me with the pamphlet. So thank you, Kaylin. But all right, guys, it's been an hour. Thank you so much for coming on. I know this is just the beginning. And we're going to try and do this every week. I understand if not everyone can do it every week, but normally I would say every month, but with the urgency of what's coming on, and we only have until halfway through October before this like really starts to hit, I'm going to be having this call every week. I want to invite people in the public. So if you know someone, tell them about it, have them go. This is going to be hosted on my channel, keystonedigital.tv. So if you go on that website, we'll have a little form. You can have, if you want to ask a question or something like that, because I know not everyone is going to want to come on and actually ask a question. So you can write one as well, and I'll read it and have it answered by one of the people who are on the call that day. But again, thank you all. We'll do this again next week at 3 o'clock. But until then, thank you so much, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Kyle.
Bye.
Thank you.